Worlds 2022 is just around the corner. On September 29th, Worlds 2022 is just around the corner. On September 29th, 2022, we are going to have one of the biggest esports tournaments in the entire pro scene of League of Legends. There's going to be numerous amount of teams from all across the world who are going to compete for the title of World Champions. And because of that, I think it is the most suitable time for us to take a look at what it is shoutcasting. Because frankly speaking, more and more I talk to people from different places and different fields of work, more and more I get the question of what do you do for a living? And when I say I'm a shoutcaster for League of Legends, mostly they look at me or they sound extremely confusing and they are not exactly getting what it is that I do, and I have to show them in order to explain that to them. Because frankly speaking, esports is a very young business, it is a very young industry, and it is very hard to explain everything that is going on around there, because sometimes even I get overwhelmed with the amount of things and the amount of information that I'm supposed to process in order to understand things right. And with that very simple and very quick introduction, my name is Dr. Brillman. You might know me as play-by-play caster for Ultraliga, or my guest appearances at NLC Division 3 or VCS English, or even as a caster for the Amazon Neo Masters play-ins of summer 2022. And I'm here to try and to give you answers for 5 most common questions probably that I have received as a shoutcaster, and I'm going to try to not only answer them but to explain to you what it is shoutcasting, what it is league professional esports scene, and how things really work, I suppose. So let's start with the very first question. It's a bit of a quickie one, it's a bit of a more history related one, but it's the one that I get asked quite a bit of times. Why is it called shoutcasting and what it is actually shoutcasting? Now, the title comes from a program that was called Shoutcast back in the day, in the early 2000s, when people used that program in order to broadcast radio over the internet. And that term pretty much stuck to us because what we do, we essentially broadcast the TV product all over the internet. Why do I say TV product is actually quite simple, because essentially what we're doing is the standard TV product, with the only difference that now it is related towards esports, towards computer gaming. Now, in the modern times, we don't really say that it is shoutcasting. We have shortened this name, this definition, this phrase, this slang term to just casters. Although, frankly speaking, it doesn't really do well because it doesn't show the entirety of things that casters do cover, because caster is a very diverse term that has way too many things and way too many roles included into it. Essentially, I agree with that. Essentially, definitely so. Essentially, it is much more easier to call it on-air broadcast talent, because that is the much better generalization of those people that work in front of the camera and give the essential information to the viewer, although caster is a bit of a different term. Now here comes the second question: how does everything work? That's a bit of a widened question that has way too many things related to it, so I'm going to try to shorten it in the most possible way and try to concentrate on those people who work on air. Now, of course, we also need to make a difference between the casting from the studio and the casting that happens in your living room. And most of the people do that right now, mainly because after COVID hit, the things have changed just a little bit. And just now, for example, we had first LEC Arena in Malmo, Sweden, where people could have actually watched the finals, not just in the TV studio or from their homes, but also could have come to the arena in order to enjoy the entire process. But essentially, it narrows itself down to a few roles that happen on the camera, pretty much on the set, let's put it this way, and of course, people that work on the production. And that's a bit of a more widened topic. You can have a lot of people that work in there, from coordinators to makeup artists to the sound engineers to camera folk to broadcast directors to the referees that watch that everything goes well, the players, of course, the lightning guys, there's just so much people going in there and trying to make sure that the show happens. It's really hard to just point out everyone. When it comes to on-air talent, now that's a little bit less tricky. So in order to narrow everything down, I think we can divide the people that work on air into 4 different groups. The first group is the host, second the interviewer, third the analysts that work on the analyst desk, and of course the caster booth themselves. Now hosts, this is pretty much something that we're used to see from other sources of TV media. When a person navigates everything that is going on, a person navigates the conversation, navigates the flow of the broadcast, and navigates the stories that you want to try and focus a little bit more on in order to understand why the match that is happening right now is actually important, and whether it is that important as you think it is, or maybe the stakes lie in a bit of a different way. With host, most of the time you have analysts working with on the analyst desk. Now, these guys are the big brains of things that are happening. They have about 20 or 30 minutes, depends on, of course, what is the state of the broadcast, where we are right now, and what are we going to do right after the analyst desk, to try and give us the core idea of who are the teams that we are looking at or that are about to play. What are their strong sides? What do they prefer to do? How do they prefer to do things? And they're pretty much throwing all of that information right into our face in the most understandably wrapping, in the most understandable wrapping, really. It is very important to listen to those people because they give us the best outline. Why is this match important? What do we have to look out for? What are the things that are going to happen that are actually that important? And pretty much what's the old fuss about? Now, the next group is the interviewers, and the name pretty much speaks for itself. It's a person who interviews the players, the coaches, or anyone who is related towards what is going to happen right now in order to give us a little bit of their own personal perspective on the things that are happening on your screens. It is a bit more straightforward, but it is nevertheless very, very important because it connects us with those people that we are about to see, really. And then the last group that is the most closest, at the very least to me, is the caster's booth. That's where the magic happens when you go right into the game. And you have 2 different people on there working right now. It's the play-by-play and the caller caster. Now, looking a little bit closer into these different groups, you need to understand what individual person does in that caster's booth. Now, first things first, play-by-play. These people shout on things that are happening. Well, not necessarily shout, but their core idea, their core source of doing is to keep track of what is going on in the game, keep everybody informed about what is going on in the game, and especially narrate the team fights for you, because when a lot of action happens, most of the times it gets a little bit messy on your screens. It's really hard to understand who does what, who runs where. A lot of things are, of course, there's color distinction from one team to the other, but it's sometimes hard to just track everything and know what is going on. So my job as a play-by-play is to keep you well tracked on the Rift, as well as keep you well tracked in the conversation, the flow of conversation that I have with my colorcaster, and of course occasionally throw you a little bit of an idea. What is the story of this match? Remind you, why is this match actually important, in case you just tuned in or you have forgot, or there's just this feeling in air that is electrified and you want to say it one more time, that the winner takes it all, or something like that. Now, colorcasters, that's a little bit of a different beast, and that is also quite interesting. Now, these guys are the big brains on air, not when you sit on the analyst desk, but when you are in the caster's booth. They tell you why things are happening the way they are happening. They tell you what the players are probably going to be doing. Why do they want to do that? Why do they not want to do that? What is maybe the best play here? Why is this play so good? And so on and so forth. You can see that there's a lot of information that they need to try and give to us, because the timings of the games are quite limited. You can go from the 20-minute game to all the way 40 and 50 and even almost 60-minute game, although that never happened. Well, that did happen, but it didn't happen for quite a bit of time. And for us to not get lost in the entire routine of things that are happening, sometimes it's a routine and it's not that interesting because people are doing things book by book, or sometimes it's more of like improvised maneuvers, almost Captain Jack Sparrow, crazy like maneuvers. And this is exactly in the moment when the colorcaster is so much needed. They make sure that we understand why things that are happening the way they are happening. And why is it happening? You get the point. And we need to make sure that between those two casters, there is this perfect chemistry. There is this synergy of people that understand each other and they understand where are we going, what are we trying to say, because there's a lot of very important intricacies that you need to know in order for the flow of the conversation to not get all stuttered. You need to have this incredible level of cohesion between you and your co-caster in order for the things to flow even better. For some of the games, however, we need something called a triocast or triocast. This is when you have 3 people on the caster's booth, and that is pretty much, essentially, that is 2 analysts and 1 play-by-play caster. This is the moment when these 2 analysts have a lot of a conversation going on. This is the moment when a lot of things are happening, and it is very important to make sure that all 3 people have this needed teamwork cohesion between themselves, because other than that, it can get a bit messy, really. And so with the differences, we sort of slide into the question number 3. How do you get your points across when we are on air? Now, it really depends on who you are and what do you do really on air. What is your primary goal in conducting those on airs? Essentially, though, I have to say that a lot of things rely on your ability to improvise and to process information right here, right now, without the need to take that step back and try to take a look around. You can, of course, do that, but you need to know when do you have that time to do that. Other than that, it's relatively simple. 2 people understand their goals. Play-by-play needs to make sure that you are staying informed. You understand the atmosphere of the game, the pace of the game, and you understand the overall color of what is going on. You need to make sure that it is entertaining. You need to make sure that it is really fun to watch. And thanks to that, you can find loads of different ways how to make it happen. When it comes to team fights, however, that's a little bit of a different story. And that's when this conversation can go into pretty much a few hours talk about different styles of casting. You can take a look at professional sportscasters or commentators. You can take a look at voice actors. You can take a look at actors themselves. You can take a look at different casters. You can see just so many ways. How can you narrate those team fights? And it really depends on what do you do the best and what style do you actually want to try and, let's say, practice on the air at this exact second. Because there's really loads of different ways. You can either narrate every single thing that is going on. You can try to instead focus on a bit more artistic narration of what is going on. You can try to concentrate on the atmosphere, on what is going on, and etc., etc. And it really depends on the personality of the folk that is behind the microphone. However, with the colorcaster, this gets a bit tricky. They need to make sure that things you are saying as a colorcaster are understandable for everyone, not really relying on their ability to understand the game. You can speak in more professional terms, you can speak in a bit more slang terms, but essentially your goal is to debunk what is happening in the most understandable ways. And for that, you have a lot of visual clues on your display when we're spectating the game, and you start to refer on things that people are most acquainted with from other games as well. It can be the gold, it can be the experience, it can be the sheer ability of your champion or the champion that this player is piloting. and so on and so forth. You are trying to connect these dots, and you do that as fast as possible because you don't really have a lot of time when you're on air. And you need to talk about things like goal leads. You need to speak about things like what these teams are good at. How do they prefer to take their games? What is the style? Who do they prefer to see as their main player, as their main superstar of the team? What are the champions that they prefer to play? Therefore, how are they going to try to execute different stages of the game? And how are they going to try to acquire their leads? Or will they try to acquire their leads? Or instead they're going to lean on to something different? And you can see that even just saying out loud all of those different things that can happen in the game, it is already quite a lot, and even trying to talk about them, it is even worse. So time is working against you really when on air. So it is really about how is your time management feels at different stages, whether you're working on analyst desk or you're working in the caster booth. You need to be very wary of the time you're spending when you're talking about something. Now, another and a very good question that I really, really like, and because this is the question that I am capable of speaking of for a really, really long time now. How do you prepare for the shows, background work, physical prep, or anything else? The easiest part of that question lies in the background work. Now, background work pretty much stands on the digging. As I say, it's the journalist research time when you're trying to prepare for the show. You need to know who are the players, where have they been, for how long have they been playing, what are their achievements, what is this organization known for, what are they doing, how are they like to do things, and so on and so forth. You also want to dig a little bit into the history of that said tournament. You also want to dig into the history of some other things, like what is the history of rivalry of these two organizations? Is there a history of that rivalry? And so on and so forth. There's a lot of information in order to process, but this is pretty much the statistic prep, or this is the informational prep, so to speak. It is, of course, very, very important, but not all of that information will be on air, mainly again because it correlates with the previous point that I was making about the time. You don't have the time to talk about pretty much everything, so you need to be very wary about what info do you want to throw in there. A lot of these statistics, a lot of these figures, and a lot of these talking points will be thrown away in the end of the day, just because you are not going to make it to talk about it. I cannot stress it enough. I cannot stress time more than enough as a topic, because that was one of the biggest deal breakers for me when I finally realized what it is time in the TV broadcasting. Now, it also correlates with the physical prep, and I want to say physical prep is not the best term to say, but the prep of the personal prep, let's put it this way, I would say it's a personal prep. Now, that is a lot of different things. You can have that physical prep going from your voice. What are you doing with your voice? How do you work with your voice? What kind of a story your voice tells? What do you excel at? What do you not excel at? What do you want to try and avoid? How to work with your energy, how to work with your pacing, how to work with your pitch as well, because that is also another thing that can tell a story. And then, of course, the stories you're trying to come up with, how to make those players more personal to the viewers that you're trying to broadcast it all to, and how to approach your work just in general. And that, I think, is one of the most interesting and one of the most intricate things, because you can take a lot of inspiration through a lot of very different fields of work. Mine essentially came from voice acting and actors in general. How do they approach their work? How do they do their work? What are they doing in order to prep for the role? How are they trying to approach different technical things, different things regarding their voice or regarding how to portray a character? I find it extremely helpful to just listen to voice actors talking a little bit about their craft, because that helps me to elevate my craft as well. Essentially, we are both working with the same instrument. We're working with voices and the way, what is this voice represents, because it is a very rare thing when you get to see my face when you are on the broadcast. It is very rare that the camera just flicks to us and we just go and speak directly looking at the camera like I do right now. Mostly you look at the game and you just hear my voice and you picture something completely different. My voice is the main instrument to tell you this particular story that is happening in front of your eyes. Therefore, for me, it is very important to look at voice actors because essentially they do the very same thing. So my prep goes into what is the story that I tell today with those teams, with those players, and why do I want this particular game to be that much important, and how do I work with my voice in order to tell all 5 of these stories for 5 straight hours. It is very important to also know thyself, right? Because I need to know where is my limit, what do I do, how do I work with the, with the instrument that I've got, right? So it is really about this self-reflection. It is a lot of work that we put behind the scenes in order for this eventual broadcast to happen. And now coming up with the 5th question, which is the hardest one for me to answer, because the most honest answer probably would be, it depends, maybe not, maybe yes. Recommending trying something out, especially when it is really about something really subjective as talent work, whether it is voice acting, on-air talent work, or just music, it is really hard to say, yes, I absolutely do recommend it, or yes, I absolutely do not recommend it. Because essentially, I can't tell you no, and I will not tell you no. Because everyone should try to give a chance for themselves at something what they really like. You need to really like what you are doing, and you have to be willing to put a lot of work into it as well. It's a lot of background work. As I said, there's so many reflections, so many masterclasses. You need to listen to all of those broadcasts. You need to make sure that you are able to process a lot of information that is coming your way, and you need to be very picky about the information that you're trying to receive. What is the person that you want to listen to? And he will give you that essential boost, that essential, flick of your thought, and just go, yeah, think in that particular direction, and maybe we'll get you somewhere. Or maybe you have this knowledge in yourself and you'll be able to do that as well. But essentially, I can definitely tell you that voice acting, and shoutcasting is very, very similar about what is the subjectivity of the work that we're doing, what is this natural talent that you have in order to do that, what is your feeling of the camera, and how are you able to present yourself in front of the camera, really. And again, what is your ability to work with all of those different stories, and how are you capable of understanding that maybe somebody will like you, and maybe somebody will not like your style or like you as a person in general. And that doesn't really narrow it down only to the viewers. That also narrows it down to the people that you're working with, whether it is your boss or your colleague, or just, the lighting guy who decided to put the lighting on you in the way that you just look ugly. Right? That never happened to be my case, honestly speaking. The last part, now lightning guys always have been incredibly kind to me, and I have to say, all my experience with the production have been nothing short of amazing, especially the Polish broadcast team. They have been absolutely a delightful team to work with, but you never really do know whether somebody is going to like you or will not like you, and the mindset with which you should approach that work is very hard to determine in terms of what is right and what is wrong. I think that topic really deserves another talk, that deserves another video, really. So if you would like me to talk about these mindsets and about how do we make these shows happen from a personal point of view, then I highly encourage you to subscribe, to hit this like and notification button, because I will know that you want me to talk about that. And I cannot wait to see you next time and talk about what makes shoutcasting shoutcasting. But for now, Thank you for your attention, ladies and gentlemen. It has been an absolute joy. My name is Dr. Brimman, as I said, and I cannot wait to talk to you for the next time.